So today's frittata is an awesome example of this removal and abundance. Hi, I'm Ali.
And I'm Becki.
We're both registered dietitians that use functional medicine approaches to healing, and we believe in the power of food as medicine.
In today's video, we will be defining and unpacking what food as medicine means, highlighting some of our favorite whole food ingredients, and making a delicious kale and caramelized onion frittata. So, Ali, let's define, first of all, for our viewers, what is food as medicine? What does that mean?
Sure. So our body requires nutrients to do all of its biochemical reactions, which is what drives the processes of our anatomy and physiology. So when we're looking at an undesirable symptom in the body, or we're looking at a disease state, it makes sense to start with food as the primary intervention, giving your body something that it knows what to do with, it understands, and it requires, especially when we can layer in targeted nutrients that optimize certain pathways in the body. Now, the important thing to understand with food as medicine is it's a double-edged sword. So it's equally about removal as much as it is about abundance. So today's frittata is an awesome example of this removal and abundance. When we think about standard breakfast options, we think of cereal and maybe worse off, pastries, donuts, muffins, and a lot of grab-and-go granola-based snacks. These are high laden in carbohydrates and refined processed ingredients often. This will create a dynamic blood sugar spike, followed by a blood sugar crash, which can make you or your child hangry, right? We get that hunger and anger and difficulty concentrating. And it really has been shown in research that protein and fat are essential for satiety, holding over our appetite, as well as enhancing concentration, focus, and cognitive function. So we've seen in research studies that when children get 15 grams of protein at their breakfast meal, they have improved testing scores. So we know protein is really important for brain function, and we know that limiting carbohydrates and keeping our blood sugar levels under control will ensure that we have healthy metabolic outcomes. This supports healthy body composition as well as blood sugar balance throughout the day.
Absolutely. And a frittata is a great example of something that you can make ahead and, eat it in the car, eat it on your way to work if you need to, and a great way to include some intentional food as medicine as well. So I've been chopping up some kale over here. We recommend as dietitians 2 to 3 cups of leafy greens every single day, and often vegetables are lacking on the breakfast table. So this is a great way to not necessarily sneak them in, but work them into your child's diet as well as your own. This kale we're going to chiffonade into teeny little ribbons so it can't be picked out by picky eaters, but you could even blend it actually in along with your eggs so that it can't be picked out or picked over.
Yes, most definitely. The kale provides us that magnesium. Anything that has chlorophyll has magnesium in the center of that molecule. So leafy greens are a great way to get magnesium, which has over 300 enzyme functions in the body. And like Becki said, 2 to 3 cups a day is a minimum goal. Over here, I am cracking eggs. These are pasture-raised eggs. So these are chickens that have access to pasture, eating grubs and grasses. And we know that eggs are not only a great source of protein, but they also provide us essential nutrients such as choline. Choline is a derivative of the B vitamin family that plays a big role with our neurotransmitters. We've seen that choline deficiency can drive neural tube defects when we're talking about prenatal health and important nutrition for mamas. But choline also plays a role with acetylcholine, which is the transductor in our neurotransmitters, playing a big role with anxiety, depression, and brain chemistry balance. So choline is very rich in liver and egg yolks. I recommend 10 to 12 eggs a week for most people. Eggs also can provide an increase of HDL, which is that favorable cholesterol compound, which works as like a broom to our blood vessels. And cholesterol is not something that we fear in our Naturally Nourished clinic. In fact, all of our cell membranes have cholesterol in the cell wall. The integrity of our membrane requires cholesterol, and the brain is heavily made up of cholesterol. So this can be a compound that has antioxidant properties, structural properties, and brain boosting support. Eggs also provide essential fats like omega-3s and provide us vitamin D.
Yes, we even have a podcast episode actually called Cholesterol as Medicine if you want to dig deep into the recommendation of why we would recommend 10 to 12 eggs per week. So I've finished chopping most of that kale. I do want to zoom in and show you guys just the technique of chiffonade real quick. So we'll scoot our garlic over. And what I've been doing here with the kale leaves is actually running my fingers down the stem to break off that leaf. So kale is one of those cruciferous veggies where you wouldn't want to really use the stem for anything in your cooking process. Sometimes with things like chard, we would reserve those stems and actually use them within our cooking. But we're gonna just compost those, running our fingers down the stem. And then once we've got like 3 or 4 leaves, we're gonna go ahead and roll them into, I like to call it a little like kale burrito here, right? So we place them all on top of each other, roll together, and then just cut into tiny ribbons all the way down, tucking back our fingers, making that bear claw. And then I'll do one cut, kind of vertical, just to chop that up really teeny tiny so they can't be picked out.
All right, and over here I have cracked 10 eggs and I'm whisking them together with salt and pepper, and that can be to taste, but I would say a good generous pinch. When you're not eating processed foods, it is important to ensure that you are getting ample salt, and we like to use a mineral-rich sea salt as our favorite go-to. So I'm whisking that all together, and then I'm also going to add in some raw aged cheddar. Now, usually I would actually be grating the cheddar from a block because you want to avoid additives in your cheese like cellulose and anti-caking agents and antifungal additives. So this raw cheddar actually is free of all those. The only ingredients are whole raw milk, the vegetable rennet, cultures, and sea salt. So we'll be adding that into our frittata today.
What a fabulous hack.
Yeah, totally. Save the step for sure. So come on and join us over by our stove and we'll put everything together.
All right, so to kick off this recipe, we've gone ahead and heated our 10-inch cast iron skillet over medium heat, and I'm adding about 2 tablespoons of one of our favorite fats, grass-fed butter. Let's get them in that pan, get that nice sizzle, and distribute our butter throughout the pan. And now I'm just gonna add in, we've got about 1 onion that's been sliced. And I'm adding a generous pinch of that Redmond real salt just to draw out some of the moisture. And I'm going to go ahead and stir these onions to coat them with fat.
Now comes one of the most difficult parts, letting the onions make contact with the pan to get that caramelization of flavor and not over agitating them. So as Becky's finding her mellow and letting the onions sit, I want to discuss with you guys a little bit further that double-edged sword element of food as medicine. So we're talking about, again, equal importance of removal as well as abundance. So we're looking at removing foods that are pro-inflammatory, removing foods that would disrupt our microbiome or that would throw off hormone balance in our body. And then looking at an abundance of foods that are anti-inflammatory, that are probiotic rich and prebiotic rich, supporting a robust microbiome. Foods that support detoxification, which can clear excess estrogen out of your colon and liver. Foods that also support hormone balance and metabolic health. So it's equally important as you move through your food as medicine journey to make strategic goals of things you remove, as well as layering in things that you have as an abundance for whole body health.
Okay, so it's been about 3 to 4 minutes. I've left the onions alone and I'm just gonna give them a quick stir. We can see we're getting some browning for sure in the pan. I'm gonna move them around and let them sit for another 3 to 4 minutes. So it's been another couple minutes. I'm going to give these onions another quick stir. You can see that they're pretty deeply caramelized and browned. And now I'm going to just add in those 2 cloves of garlic that I chopped. It's important to add your garlic after you cook down the onions so that you don't burn those garlic cloves. And actually, as you let them sit out, smashed and chopped, you're releasing more of their sulfur-containing compounds. And now, after the garlic, we're going to just throw in our greens and let those wilt down a little bit too. I'll coat them with the fat and then just let them sit. Okay, so our greens have at least reduced by half, and now it's time to add those eggs.
So Becky's gonna make sure that they're all spread equally around, and I'm pouring in our whisked eggs with salt and pepper, and I also added in the chopped chives. We're going to use the back of a spoon to make sure that the egg mixture is distributed, and then we're gonna wait for tiny bubbles to appear at the surface. So you don't wanna stir your pan, you wanna allow it to sit and just press down gently. When those tiny bubbles and air pockets come up, we know that the frittata is being formed, and then we will pat on some cheese and finish it in the oven. All right, so before I add the cheese, I just want to call your attention to some of these little bubbles coming up at the surface. We can see air escaping through these pockets. We can also see along the edge of the frittata, we're getting a nice formed crust, just a little bit of that gooiness in the center. So I'm going to put the raw cheddar and distribute this on the top here, just using my wooden spoon to share that cheddar throughout the frittata. And then I'm going to transfer this whole skillet. Be mindful that if you're using a cast iron, the handle gets quite hot. And I'm going to transfer this whole frittata into the oven at 375 for about 10 to 12 minutes. So it's been in for 10 minutes. And the cheese is looking bubbly and delicious, and we can see that we have a nice rise that came up from the eggs. So we'll let this rest for about 5 minutes, and we're ready to eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner, a totally balanced meal. If you enjoyed today's episode of our Food is Medicine channel, make sure that you go down and subscribe. Every week we'll be sharing tips, tricks, and delicious snacks.
And down below in the notes as well, you can get a link to subscribe to our newsletter and receive a 2-week meal plan so that you can get a taste of food as medicine.
My hands burning.